Do you like fairy tales? How about musicals? What about horny Spanish musical fairy tale shows? Well, if you do, the new Netflix series Once Upon a Time, Happily Never After might be something you want to watch. Or is it? Two lovers who are tragically separated must find each other in another life to break the spell that fell on the eccentric town they live in. But the arrival of two tourists will put at risk the only possibility they have of breaking the enchantment. So when a princess and a fisherman fell in love but were forbidden to be together, a witch cast a spell that would allow them to be together. But if they didn't follow the rules of the spell exactly, the entire town would never be able to fall in love again. Now there is an out. If the two lovers release a special blue dragon in the town's lake when a pink moon is out, which then happens only at once every 7 years, the spell will be broken and the town can experience love again. And just in case it can't happen in one time, the spell will last through generations and generations. Alright, so the show is weird. It bounces back and forth between past and present, where the same actors play different characters. And that's really not what makes it as weird. At random points, characters will break out into song to help tell the story, and that also isn't the weird part. What's strange is the execution of the entire story. Nothing is truly bound by time, so when we're in the past where it looks to be medieval times, there are still aspects of technology and modern touches. The costume and set designs are really colorful and bright, enhancing the fairy tale feel and adding this strange whimsy to the whole production. And the performances are just as colorful and bright. Now, they are exaggerated to make the characters bigger than life and then bordering on the ridiculous, but somehow they still remain fun and even charismatic. The makeup is overdone, but it fits with all the other aesthetics of the production. And I like how the use of bright neon colors highlights so much of what we see. They accent the actors and the settings in a way that make it feel a bit sugary and maybe lighthearted, despite the small darkness that surrounds the entire story. What blew me away in this were the musical performances. At least one of the actors is an accomplished singer as well, and it wouldn't surprise me if several of them had musical theater backgrounds because they can do more than just carry a tune. They sing in ways that are emotional and moving and also very captivating. The series is a fairly short one at 6 episodes that are each about that 30-minute mark. I think one of the frustrating elements of this show is that one character, Goya, is played by the same actor who portrays the princess. But everyone in the modern time keeps saying how a visitor named Juana looks exactly like the pictures of the princess. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out why this was, but the answer finally comes in the final episode. It's sort of a weird place to put it when we already can tell that Goya looks identical to the princess. Now, just because the townspeople can't fall in love doesn't mean they can't have love. And a lot of that comes from the town gigolo who works at the castle that's now a hotel. And this adds a complication when it comes to relationships, especially because the gigolo looks a lot like the fisherman that the princess loved. But there's also just this overarching sexuality to the storyline that doesn't hurt the story or really add anything either. Now, the trajectory of this feels predictable, but the title tells us that not everything turns out the way that we expect. This having a magical and fairy tale element to the story, the show employs some special effects that look surprisingly good. Now, the dragon that we see is obviously CGI, and it's tiny, but it's cute, and the iridescent colors and textures make it look pretty realistic looking. Now, parts of this feel like we are watching a music video. Now, some of that comes from the choreography and the way that the scenes are just staged. The camera moves in between and then all around the singers and the dancers to put us right into the musical act. Now, thankfully, it doesn't employ a bunch of these frenetic quick cuts between the singers and the dancers, so that we are actually able to focus on what's going on. Storytelling is a little clunky as it goes back and forth from complication to complication. There were a couple of times that felt like the narrative lost the direction and was distracted by trying to be clever rather than moving the story ahead in a straightforward manner. This wasn't a huge deal, but a few things made the story longer than necessary, which maybe was on purpose since this is already a pretty short show. Now, this isn't going to be for everyone, and I can't really see it being something that's incredibly rewatchable, but I did end up getting sucked into the story and having fun with it. The music and the singing are really what make this stand out, and I don't think the show would work in its current form without the talented singers to belt out these emotional songs. What ends up happening is that despite some of the music video vibe the show has, this ends up being more like musical theater as the songs actually progress the dialogue and the narrative forward. Now, these aren't just songs for singing's sake, but the words are the dialogue, and because they're beautifully sung, I was really drawn to it. So overall, this is a fantastical modern-day fairy tale that employs bright colors and lively characters to build out a quirky love story. The special effects look good, and the entire production is outstanding to look at thanks to the wonderful makeup, costume, and sets. While the story itself may be a bit clunky in spots and the pacing slightly uneven at times, the singing is phenomenal, with songs that are touching and voices that are absolutely engrossing. The silliness of the overall story became endearing, and despite feeling like it had a very predictable arc, the narrative was able to hold on to a few surprises, making this feel good romance executed in a way that you may not have seen before. There's a bunch of sex and nudity, a lot of profanity, and some violence. I give Once Upon a Time, Happily Never After 3.5 out of 5 couches. So what are you binging on right now? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.